Welcome to Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. You are going to hear the stories from the eclectic life of a guy who is a professional counselor, a family man, a SWAT team chaplain, outdoor enthusiast, a guy involved with ropes, 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu, a chaotic Jedi, and who is a recipient of an honorary doctorate from the University of Adversity. Using these stories, we take the facts lead to concepts, and from the concepts we make a variety of life applications. Just a caveat about the facts. Most of the time we will tell you the facts just the way it happened, but once in a while we'll give you the facts the way other people remember how it happened, and that usually includes a tablespoon of embellishment. No harm is meant, just good, clean fun for educational purposes. Please subscribe and share this with your friends or your enemies. It might help them to be better people if they listen. As always, we thank you for keeping up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. Introducing the Bible degree with digital ministry. Paul used the marketplace and the synagogue to reach an expanded audience. We have access to the internet and social media. I once heard it said that when McDonald's introduced the drive-through window, they did not change the Big Mac, only how it was delivered. Faulkner University is now offering a new digital ministry track for their Bible degree. Faulkner's degree provides training in understanding and teaching the gospel, alongside training that will allow students to create quality digital content. Opportunities for evangelism in the digital spaces is unlimited, and this is innovative ministry education for our contemporary culture. One of the instructors is a 2-time Emmy-winning former ESPN designer. Members of the Church of Christ could be eligible for the full tuition Jack Zorn Scholarship in order to pursue this special area of study. For more information, contact admissions at faulkner.edu. That is admissions at faulkner.edu. Faulkner University is a digital partner with Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. Hey Jones. And it was not a question, and it really wasn't a statement. It was, a call for attention. The speaker had just disappeared over the edge of a cliff face at Three Caves. Three Caves is actually a former limestone quarry. It was originally called Hermitage Quarry, and it operated from 1945 to 1952 in Huntsville, Alabama. They removed the limestone from this quarry using the room and pillar mining method, and created these large rooms with these big pillars, and also created these 3 large cave-like entrances, to which some marketing genius working for Haybuild Industries, no doubt, dubbed Three Caves. There's a 6-acre underground compound and these caverns, and they've been used as a movie set. They filmed The Ravagers, What Waits Below, and Kansas filmed the music video Reason to Be in this little place. It's also housed concerts and been home to many miscreant teens and some illegal substances, as well as being used as a fallout shelter during the Cuban Missile Crisis. I am responsible for using it as a haunted hike, and I performed one wedding during that same haunted hike. It has also housed operations for rappelling. I've rappelled there many, many, many times. I've rappelled there both recreationally and I guess you'd call it professionally. I've introduced lots of young people to rope work there, and I've been privileged to take some tactical teams and some military teams there and introduce them to the basics of rappelling down a rope. I've worked with Huntsville SWAT, Madison County SWAT, and I think, if I remember correctly, there was a group out of NASA called the Rapid Action Team. I think they called themselves the RAT Team. I'm not sure if they were with NASA or with the military. Anyway, they were from the Arsenal. So here I am. I'm overseeing some student rappelling. I've got people from my youth group, and I love to use Three Caves because it's very local, very convenient. Easy walk in, easy walk out, not very far to go. And so I'm standing here at the top of this thing, and I hear this, "Hey, Jones." I'm tethered off to a small line using a clove hitch and a totally separate anchor point. And so I can approach the edge and lean over and look down. Now, this particular line of descent is one of my favorites in all of rappelling, because it starts with a gradual, less than vertical slope, and it goes down several yards, and then it breaks to an absolute hard 90-degree sheer rock wall. And then after you rappel on that for just a little bit, it slowly opens up and becomes the third or the first cave opening, depending on which way you're counting from, of the three caves. It's about a 50-foot tall opening. You could drive several semi-trailers through it. And hanging there in front of this opening is Lisa Corder, now Lisa Carper. She's one of our youth sponsors. She worked with our youth ministry very closely over the number of years. Our children grew up together. This is before we had kids. Any of us had kids. And so she's here, and her shirt has been eaten by the rappel device, and she's stuck. Now, she didn't do anything wrong. In most rappelling cases, you've got your brake hand behind your back, and your feet are against the wall, and you keep your legs fairly straight, and you lean back just a little. Well, when you move from being able to touch the wall to your feet just hanging in midair, everybody has a tendency to rock forward and become more vertical than they are, leaning back. This is not something that is anybody's fault. It just happens when you've got a small body and your legs are longer than your upper body. Unless you're wearing body armor, you're going to lean forward. If you're wearing body armor, it tends to pull you backwards. Well, she leaned forward as soon as her feet got past the rock wall, and she was just hanging there in midair. And as t-shirts tend to do, it get tangled up in the figure eight device. She's stuck. Now, if she goes any further down this rope, her shirt's going to be drawn into this rappel device, and it's going to choke her unconscious. Well, if you listen to last week's podcast, this ain't my first rodeo. Now, these two instances happened years apart, and I've got lots more experience on this one than I did the first one. And I already know that the best solution to this is not take your shirt off, I'm here to help you. That sounds about as much comfort as trust us, we're from the government. Oh, no, I'm not doing this again. As I grew in my expertise in managing a rock site, my practice is now to always have a secondary rope already set up and ready for emergencies. And this seemed to be an emerging emergency. So I rappelled down the rope, got slightly, not very far above my stranded friend, and I took a special piece of equipment off my harness, a thing called a Jumar. It's typical. That's not the trade name, that's the company name, but it's an ascender. And you clip this to the rope, and I said, okay, just grab that and see if you can pull up enough to relieve the pressure and have your shirt come loose. Now, it wouldn't take a lot to do this. I mean, there's not a lot of shirt eaten in this thing yet, and it should be pretty easy to do. It wouldn't take a lot of effort to relieve the pinch. But pull-ups are hard. Pull-ups are hard for anybody, and especially they're hard for people hanging on a rope with nothing to put your feet on and trying to do the awkward grip of doing a pull-up in a handled Jumar or a handled ascender. It's super, super awkward. Now, if her feet had been touching the wall, she'd have been able to pull a little bit with her arm, push a little bit with her toes, and it would have been super easy. But we're both hanging in free space. We didn't know anything about auto blocks and those kind of progress capture things in those days. And so I got my brake hand behind me. She's stuck, unable to pull herself up. And so with my hand in place, my brake hand, I turned upside down and reached out with my free hand, and from an inverted position, I did a one-arm inverted lat pull. I grabbed the large opening of the figure eight she was rappelling on, and I pulled. Now, like I said, it's not going to take much to free this shirt. So don't get any crazy ideas about some awkward or amazing feat of strength. It didn't take a lot to do. However, I felt like it was a pretty decent upside down lat pull curl. It was probably just the adrenaline talking to allow me to lift her as well as I did, but it was a one-arm feat. And just about the time her t-shirt came loose and she started to rappel down the rope, I felt this really interesting burning. And it went all the way from my shoulder all the way to my leg. Now Lisa was free and she finished the rappel and we all continued our adventure. I didn't really tell anybody, but my ribs were hating me. Later on, my underarm would turn black. I think the soft connective tissue around my ribs and my lats had some problems. And then later on, a couple of days later, I discovered this bubble. A bubble right below my belt line, right above my right inner thigh, or right above my right thigh where it connects to my body. And this, ladies and gentlemen, was my first and often not talked about and neglected hernia. 10 out of the 11 procedures that I've had in my abdominal area dealing with hernias were all ventral hernias. This was an inguinal hernia, and it had to be fixed. With all due respect to the two surgeons who have saved my life, Dr. Sellers in Anniston, Alabama, and Dr. Najjar in Huntsville, Alabama. And we're not going to mention Dr. Frankenstein, who worked at Helen Keller Memorial. And he really did fix the hernia, but he left sutures in me. I got an infection on my liver and my lung was collecting water while I was in his hospital. And all political correctness aside, I should have known that going to an ER called Helen Keller Memorial was like attending a raid planning school at the George Armstrong Custer School for Humility and Tactical Readiness. But anyway, this was my very first and relatively unknown and seldom talked about hernia. And with all due respect to Dr. Sellers and Dr. Najjar, this mesh has never torn, never failed, and never caused subsequent problems. And it was a minor surgery, and then I had a seamless recovery. So, after my very first surgery, way back in the late 1900s, I got my very first surgeon speech. For 1 month, I don't want you to do anything. I don't want you to do any pushing, pulling, lifting, or exerting. And I wasn't really sure what he meant by pushing, pulling, lifting, or exerting. It seemed a little vague to me. And so I asked him to be more specific, and he got more specific. He said, I don't want you to lift anything heavier than it takes you to use one hand. Now, my sweet, lovely, adoring, and supportive wife says, do you realize what he can lift with just one hand? That's when he said, okay, nothing over 7 pounds. No volleyball, no basketball, no racquetball, no push-ups, no pull-ups, no climbing, no rappelling, no fishing. You get the idea. I'm sitting here thinking my life's going to be ruined for 1 whole month. I might as well go for the goal. I should have kept my mouth shut, but I didn't. I said, well, what about cutting the grass? I mean, in my mind, you're pushing, you're pulling, and you're lifting gas cans. He looked at me and said, I don't have any problem with that. You don't have any problem with that? I can't play any kind of ball. I can't fish. I can't climb. I can't work out, but I can cut the stupid grass. Now, that was all in my head. I smile pleasantly at Dr. Lancaster, and he still thinks we're friends. It must be tough. I mean, it's got to be a terrible position to have to tell people what they are not allowed to do. And if that's not bad enough, telling people what they have to do, or they must do, or they need to do, stuff that's hard and not particularly enjoyable may even be the worst part of it. I'm going to tell you to do something and you're not going to like it. The only people who've made my life harder than my surgeons at giving me restrictions are the physical therapist who told me things I have to do while my arms are hurt, or my elbow was hurt, or my knee was hurt. No one likes to hear what the restrictions are, but no one wants to hear what the necessary evils are. You have to do this, or it will never improve. I'm sure I could get away with some of those things he told me not to do, but the real question is, could I get away with it and be optimally healthy and happy? Why is it in our nature? Why is it that we rebel against the things that are designed as safeguards and improvements? What is there about us that keeps us from enjoying the things we're allowed to do in the parameters we're allowed to do them, and makes us yearn for the things that would hurt us anyway? And what is there about us that when somebody says, if you don't do this, it will never improve, we tend to rebel against that. We tend to kick against it. We tend to be resistant, and we don't want to do it. Everything in God's holiness code is designed to help us. And the holiness code is this phrase I read in a book where a guy's discussing the things that God tells us to do and not to do. And it really boils down to God has designed some things that keep us holy. And he calls it the holiness code. And the rules of the holiness code keep us safe, or help us heal. God's restrictions are not, if you do this, I will hurt you. God's restrictions, the holiness code, is built from the standpoint, if you do this, it will hurt. You will get hurt, or you will hurt someone. God doesn't punish us. When God says don't do this and we do it, God doesn't invent or create some consequence. The consequence for those behaviors has always existed. And God's holiness code is the warning that says, stay away from that. Don't do it this way, do it this way. The consequences are always there, and God's rules are not designed to keep evil away from us. God's rules are designed to keep us away from evil. In one of the New Testament letters that the apostles wrote to the followers of Jesus, in one of those letters, the apostle will say, God has given us all things that pertain to life and godliness. The things that pertain to life involve avoiding those things that damage or hurt or harm us. Avoiding those things, those activities that are not good for us. The things that pertain to godliness involve those exercises that are difficult and often unpleasant, but allow us to be more like God likeness. Treating other people the way God treats us, cheek turning, enemy loving, praying for those same enemies, double coupon days on miles, giving, forgiving, forbearing. It's not an easy list. Neither column is pleasant all of the time. Sometimes it's not pleasant any of the time, but the design is to help us, not to restrict us or hurt us, but to give us optimal living. As I've studied what we call the New Testament scriptures, and the New Testament scriptures simply are the Gospels, the 4 books that tell us the story of Christ, and then the letters written to the subsequent generation of Christ followers. And those letters were simply written, and I've discovered that they were written, it's the holiness code. It's the Christianity holiness code, the prescriptions and the proscriptions, all in some way related to relationships. These are the things you should do, prescriptions, and they're good for me, they're good for you, they're good for us. The proscriptions are, hey, don't act this way, don't treat each other this way, don't think this way, because if you do, it'll hurt me, it'll hurt you, or it'll hurt us. Before you get to the New Testament, if you're reading the Bible, you're reading the Old Testament, Genesis through Malachi, there are 639 laws in that Mosaic covenant, plus hundreds of more traditions or interpretations of those laws that come from the rabbins, the oral tradition. But when they asked Jesus, hey, choose the most important, choose the greatest of these laws and these interpretations of law, Jesus would simply say, hey, you love God, you love people. The rules, the holiness code, can be summed up in those 2 concepts: love God, love people. It boils down to, don't do these things, it will interfere with you and God, or it will create difficulties for you and others. The reflexive is true about the positive commands, the positive rules, the laws, the principles, or the axioms. Treating people or responding to people this way is good for you, it's good for them, and good for the community of humanity. God says, I repaired this thing you broke. I repaired this thing in you that is broken. I repaired it, I restored it, I redeemed, I reconciled you. I removed sin from you, this thing that needed to be taken out or taken away. It was killing you. And I asked you to do or not to do, and I did that not to hurt you, but I ask you to do these things and don't do these things because you are already hurt. I'm asking you to do certain things, and although they are difficult, although they are inconvenient, although they are counterintuitive, they're not easy, they aren't designed to hurt, but rather to heal. Rules are not made to be broken. Rules are made for the broken. Using the tool of shortwave radio, World Christian Broadcasting literally covers the world every day with the gospel. They use 2 large curtain antennas. One is located in Anchor Point, Alaska, and the other in Madagascar. They send out messages that are recorded at their international home in Franklin, Tennessee. They make available 40 hours of broadcast every day. The broadcasts are made in English, Chinese, Russian, Spanish, Portuguese, Korean, English for Africa, and Arabic. They would love for your group to visit them. You can bring your ladies group, your youth group, or your men's group. Just give them a call at 615-371-8707, 615-371-8707, or you can go to worldchristian.org, find the Donate Here button, and make a financial contribution to support this work that literally covers the world every day with the gospel. World Christian Broadcasting, in cooperation with Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure.